All right. Very quickly, if you could like and or subscribe to this channel, please give Examining Kubrick a chance, and please consider supporting the channel via Patreon. Now let us get to the thing, which is mixed. So most people will probably know the background, but let me go through it very quickly. The Aftermath Foundation used to be run and created by Aaron Smith Levin, but the board, through Mike Rinder and Claire Headley, frankly had a coup d'etat. They got rid of him, and the foundation has been rocked by a lot of scandals, a lot of crises, and months later, from last year's controversies, now they're responding by adding 3 new members. And all these are very interesting people, but I'm going to focus on John and compare and contrast him to Doug Scott Kramer, because there's a lot of overlap between what John did and Doug did in terms of looking at the ugly, dark, hidden history of Scientology, but they came to different conclusions. So the upside, these are more credible people. They do have better track records. I mean, Atack brags that he's saved 600 people. That's a lot of people, but I like to know a source for that statistic. I have no doubt he's dealt with people traumatized, people leaving Scientology. He's been very strong in condemning Hubbard and his mind control. So if you do hate L. Ron Hubbard, he's the guy. He's provided massive amounts of data to destroy Hubbard's reputation. The other 2 are also very interesting choices. They're more activist. One is not in Scientology ever. The other is an ex-Scientologist, and they were helping behind the Billboard campaign. So these choices are more credible. They are more activist. That said, the major complaints that the board itself is very corrupt hasn't really been addressed. 2 major issues were there were too many married couples. At this point, that has not been altered. The other major problem is that Mike Rinder, his status within OSA, his lack of transparency, that is also not addressed. So it's very mixed. On the one hand, these are good choices. The choices themselves are not bad, but there is a consequence, which I will get into. So if you know Doug's work, it was very wide ranging. He covered many, many topics. Cults of all kinds, satanic cults, Scientology, Hollywood cults, so many different topics. But two major guiding, two major subjects he kept returning to was how people are manipulated through information. And so he was willing to look at more conspiracy histories, conspiracy theories. He didn't believe them necessarily, but he thought we should be more open to them. He also thought there should be no, and I mean no tolerance for Hubbard. He was willing to talk to people who were Scientologists, right? Independent Scientologists. However, he felt Hubbard was genuinely evil and should be eradicated. I'm a little less radical, but I have no issue with his basically anti-Hubbard stance. And their JON Atack is actually very good, and they have pretty identical positions. However, JON Atack has covered the history of Scientology in many places on his YouTube channel and elsewhere. And there was just one disturbing episode where he was covering the possible links of the CIA mind control to Scientology through Jolly West, a very controversial psychologist. And this is not conspiracy theory. It is confirmed he worked with the CIA. He worked on mind control experiments. But Atack was very skeptical. He didn't want to go too into that. Apparently, he was very pro-West. And he just felt some of these attacks on him went a little bit too far. Doug was not like that. He did not have any sacred cows. Even if you were a friend, he was extremely critical. And he did see a lot of overlapping, disturbing links between all these things. The CIA, the occult, Scientology, Hubbard, and he was willing to explore them. At the same time, he didn't go overboard. He didn't think everything was OSA. He didn't say, listen, not everything is Hubbard's evil work. There are different groups. There are different interest groups. However, he did see disturbing patterns and overlaps. So I would say Doug essentially went back and forth between mainstream people and extreme people. He'd have on mainstream journalists and mainstream researchers, but he'd have more extreme people. And you'd have to pick and choose which is better for you, right? He had the controversial conversation with Dark Tony. I think it went well, but apparently he was not impressed with Dark Tony afterwards, separated on bad terms. To put it mildly, JON Atack would never speak to someone like Dark Tony. He just wouldn't, and he hasn't. JON Atack is just way too friendly to Rinder and way too friendly to these mainstream narratives. So at the end of the day, has the Aftermath Foundation improved? Yes. However, the consequence is it's still within the mainstream. It now has a more activist feeling. That's good. It will be more active in the grassroots. That's also good. However, it's going to stick to the mainstream. So the question returns to, if you like mainstream anti-Scientology, you'll be happy. If you think mainstream anti-Scientology needs to be radically altered, you're not going to be happy. So I wish they picked someone like Doug, who, rest in peace, he's not available. But there are many harsh, independent people out there who would have been challenging Rinder and challenging the mainstream understanding of Scientology and anti-Scientology, and they've not picked anyone like that. So they could improve the board a lot, but they've chosen not to. So this is a slight improvement, which is better than nothing, but it is only a slight improvement.